I made this card recently for a challenge that Stampin' Up set us to use the colours Pretty Peacock, Pool Party, Early Espresso and Crumb Cake. I thought I'd just show you how I made the card. So I took a Whisper White thick piece of cardstock. It was A4. I've cut it in half to create an A5 card base. Scored in half it becomes A6. And the first thing I did was, using the Early Espresso ink, was to stamp the sentiment from the Positive Thoughts stamp set. I think this sentiment at the current time is very, very apt. And I've stamped it right at the bottom of the card. I've then put my card to one side. From Early Espresso, using the stitched rectangle framelets, this is the second largest size, so I've cut that matte layer. Then, using the dies that went with the Positive Thoughts stamp set, if you were lucky enough to have purchased them, they were available till the end of March. I thought they were rather lovely, so I cut the rectangle from that. If you don't have those, you could always use the next size down on the stitched rectangles. It would work fine. They're designed to mat and layer together. So firstly, I want to speckle the white layer so it's not so stark and white, and I did that. Just going to cover that up so I don't get ink everywhere. Taking one of our Stampin' Right markers and the cap and the brush end, which is indicated by the thicker bar. Let me just show you, the other end is the finer end of the felt pen. I like to use the thick end for this, and just flick against the lid and you can get some speckles on your piece of Whisper White. Just gives it a little bit more texture, a little bit more interest. Okay, so I'm going to just put those two pieces together using the multi-purpose glue, the Tombow glue, which is my adhesive of choice. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a big fan of the Tombow glue. I like the fact that if you leave it to dry, it becomes repositionable, and then if you have something that you're not quite sure where you want it, or you want to be sure it's on really straight, if you just pop some glue on the back of it and set it to dry, once it's clear, you can pick it up and pop it down a few times until you've got it exactly where you want it. Just going to pop that to one side for a moment. I took another piece of Whisper White, and this is A6 in size, so a quarter of a sheet of A4. And using the Pretty Peacock, I stamped the leaf image from the Positive Thoughts stamp set. And what I did, to get 3 shades, I stamped once, rotated it just so as I can be a bit more frugal with the paper, without re-inking, stamp again and again, and you'll get 3 shades of the Pretty Peacock. It's quite handy if you want to just vary whatever it is that you're stamping. If you stamp off, as we call that, it gives you an alternative to having several shades of ink pad. You can get several shades with just one ink pad, so it's really handy, get maximum use out of your inks. I'm just going to set that to one side. I also stamped the flower from the same stamp set. Everything is from the same stamp set today, using the Pool Party ink. To make sure I get ink all over it. Okay, and I just stamped that full strength. Then, using the same ink pad I stamped the butterfly. I'm just going to stamp off so I get a paler shade of Pool Party. It's quite delicate. You can see the difference between the two there. The one first impression, that's the stamped off paler shade. Just going to set that to one side as well. And then with a piece of crumb cake, you can dig out your scraps for some of this. I'm sure you've got them. I know I have plenty of scraps. And I'm just inking up, using crumb cake ink, I'm inking up the feather. I'm going to stamp it once, and then without re-inking, I'm going to stamp again to give me a paler shade of crumb cake. I'm getting lots and lots of different shades from only those few different ink pads there. Then die cut all of those pieces out. I'm not going to go and do that and bore you while I race off to my Big Shot machine. And the dies should work in any die cutting machine that you have. You just have to make sure you use the manufacturer's recommended sandwich to cut them out. They're just the thin metal edge dies. And the other thing I did, which I'll do now, I just took my piece of scrap again, and some of the Whisper White, the crinkled Whisper White ribbon, which I absolutely love. And this time I took a Stampin' Blend, and again it's got the two ends, it's got the brush end and the finer point end, and they've indicated which is which with those bands as well. Taking the brush end and just using it on its side, just stroke down, gently stroke down the ribbon. You could colour any white or pale coloured ribbon with these blends. They're alcohol markers, so it evaporates off really quickly. You shouldn't end up with inky fingers. I say you shouldn't, I mean I'm quite often, there you are, look, my hands are pretty grubby now. They're not looking their best. I've been decorating for a few days, and unfortunately the act of decorating does take its toll on your hands sometimes, especially when you get covered in paint like I do. I think I probably wear as much as I get on the wall. Anyway, so you can now see I've taken white ribbon and it's now Pretty Peacock. Something I really like to do, colour my ribbons to match my project. Okay, so going back to this piece, I'm just going to tie a little knot in my piece of ribbon. When you cut your ribbon, make sure it's long enough to go around your matte layer and a little to spare. I'm just using my cheats way of doing this. Just want a little knot. And then what I'll do, I'll just make a little cut. I'm just going to secure that to the back of my layer. This won't get seen, so I'm just using a little bit of sellotape. You can use a glue dot or whatever you like to secure your ribbon, whatever you normally use. I think I just want that knot a little bit further over. Just put it so it's not going to be saggy on the front, because like Mary Berry's cakes with soggy bottoms, we don't want saggy fronts either. Just going to reposition that till I'm happy with how it looks. That's better. Okay, pop that to one side. Then taking my die cuts. So I've taken the darkest one first, and all I'm doing is just in my hand, I just want to get an idea of how I might want them to look when they're together on here. So I'm just going to keep them in my free hand. Take a small bit of glue. You don't need loads. This isn't going to have to be handled and played with. It is a greetings card. So that's enough to secure that. While that's just sorting itself out, I'm just going to pop some dimensionals on the back of my card. Just didn't want everything to be too flat, so I'm just going to pop some dimensionals onto this layer. You don't need hundreds. These will not go anywhere once they're on. It's going to stay put unless you're really aggressive with it and pick them off. Nobody needs to be aggressive with a greetings card, do they? So let's see. Okay, and I'm just going to secure that now to my card base. Okay, so now we can build up the card a little bit more. So just deciding exactly whereabouts I want to pop them, and I'll pop a little bit more glue on this time, but not loads. It really doesn't need loads. It's not going to go anywhere. And just secure that in place. And for my flower, I've also popped that on some dimensionals, and I've just buried them from myself. Where have I put them? Oh, there, they flipped over. Thought I was going bonkers then. I'm bringing them in from the edge because I want to tuck the feathers underneath. So if they're right on the edge, it doesn't give you very much room to tuck things underneath. And just hold that until you've got it where you might want to pop it. If that was annoying you, could always trim it off. In fact, I'm just going to pop a tiny spot more glue under there. And perhaps under there as well. Okay, and then pop your flower down. And then I'm only putting a little bit of glue at the base of the feathers. I'm just popping one there. One there. And then with my butterfly, I just want to give him, her, don't know, how do you sex a butterfly? Carefully, I would suggest. Just using my tweezers as the guide for the body, I'm just giving him a bit of a bend. And I might just give another little bit of a curl using a bone folder to the wings. And then I'm only going to stick the body down, so just a tiny bit of glue there. And pop the body there. There we are. One finished card. Obviously we don't like to have naked envelopes, so take your envelope and stamp something on it. There's one I did earlier for my son living in New Zealand. I managed to do it upside down, but hey, it doesn't really matter, does it? It'll still look pretty when it gets there. So the products I've used today, I've used the Positive Thoughts stamp set. I really do like this, and I think sending positive thoughts and feel good wishes, there's never been a more appropriate time to send that message to anybody. The stitched rectangles. The Positive Thoughts stamp set is product number 151490. That's in the January to June mini catalogue on page 23. The stitched rectangle dies are product number 148551. They're in the annual catalogue on page 196. I did use coordinating dies that go with the Positive Thoughts stamp set. They were available for a short time if you were lucky enough to have purchased them. If you weren't, fussy cut the images. You know, there's no reason why not. And then you could also then use the next rectangle down. I used the second largest to cut my early espresso layer. You could use the next size down, and that would give you a nice border and be even, and it would give you the textured stitched edge as well, so it would be nice. The ink pads I've used early espresso, Pretty Peacock, Pool Party and Crumb Cake. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to message me and ask, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. And anyway, stay safe and well. I hope you've enjoyed my video. I'm quite new to this, so this is only the third video I've made. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Maybe even consider subscribing, because who knows how many videos I might make. I could turn into one of these, I don't know. I can't think of the names of anybody that makes films at the moment. It's gone completely out of my head. But anyway, I could end up being somebody that does a lot of videos. Thanks for your attention and time today. Stay safe and well out there. Bye.